The Jedi Temple is burning. Order 66 has begun. Anakin Skywalker marches up those steps with the 501st Legion, ready to slaughter everyone inside. Younglings, masters, friends. This is how it ends. But what if it didn't? What if 3 words spoken 18 months earlier changed everything? My master is Palpatine. Count Dooku sits in a Republic prison cell, staring at the Jedi Council. He's captured, defeated, and he knows Sidious will have him killed to protect the secret. So he speaks. He reveals the one truth that could shatter the galaxy. The Supreme Chancellor, the man the Jedi trust, the leader of the Republic itself, is Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who orchestrated everything. And this time, the Jedi listen. Yoda closes his eyes. He reaches out through the Force, really looks at Palpatine for the first time in years. And there it is. The darkness. The cold, vast emptiness hiding behind that grandfatherly smile. Blind we have been, Yoda whispers. And in that moment, everything changes. No rushed confrontation. No desperate last stand. No Order 66 decimating the Jedi in a single night. Instead, the Jedi have time. Time to plan. Time to investigate. Time to save Anakin Skywalker before Palpatine's claws sink too deep. But knowing the truth and stopping a Sith Lord who controls the entire Republic are two very different things. Palpatine isn't just powerful. He's the Senate. He commands the clone army. He's loved by billions. One wrong move and the Jedi become traitors trying to overthrow democracy. So the Council must play the most dangerous game in galactic history. They have to gather evidence, remove the inhibitor chips from the clones, prepare for a confrontation, and do it all while Palpatine sits in his office mere kilometers away, unaware that his 1,000-year plan is unraveling. The question is, can they move fast enough? Or will Palpatine sense the trap closing around him and activate Order 66 before they're ready? This is the story of how 18 months changed the fate of trillions. How one Sith Lord's confession became the galaxy's salvation. How Anakin Skywalker stayed in the light. And how the Jedi Council, facing their greatest test, finally opened their eyes before it was too late. For our divergence point, let's place the discovery about 18 months before the Battle of Coruscant. The Clone Wars are still raging, but the Jedi Order is still relatively intact. Anakin hasn't yet begun his final descent into darkness. And most importantly, he hasn't yet married Padme in secret or learned about her pregnancy. The circumstances of how they discover the truth matters immensely, so let's consider the most likely scenario. Count Dooku has been captured alive during a mission on the Outer Rim. Perhaps Anakin showed restraint, or perhaps Obi-Wan intervened before the killing blow. Either way, Dooku sits in a Republic prison, and the Jedi Council decides to interrogate him personally. Yoda, Mace Windu, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Ki-Adi-Mundi stand before the former Jedi Master in his cell. Dooku knows his time is limited. Palpatine will not allow him to live, will not allow him to reveal the grand design. But Dooku is a proud man, and in his pride, he sees an opportunity for one final act of defiance against the Master who was always planning to replace him. He looks at his former colleagues, at Yoda who trained him decades ago, and he speaks a truth that will shatter their world. "My master is closer than you think," Dooku says with a bitter smile. He sits in the highest office of the Republic. He has manipulated every move of this war. Chancellor Palpatine is Darth Sidious. The words hang in the air like a death sentence. The Jedi Council members exchange glances of disbelief. Mace Windu's hand instinctively moves toward his lightsaber. Obi-Wan shakes his head, certain this must be another deception. Another layer of lies from the Sith. But Yoda closes his eyes, reaching out through the Force, and for the first time in years, he allows himself to truly look at the Chancellor without the veil of politics and propriety. And there, hidden beneath layers of carefully constructed mental shields, he senses it. The cold, vast darkness. The corruption that has been festering at the heart of the Republic for over a decade. Yoda's ears droop, and when he opens his eyes, there is a terrible sadness in them. "True, Dooku's words are," he says quietly. "Blind we have been. The implications hit them all at once like a speeding starfighter. Every emergency power granted to Palpatine, every executive order, every military decision, all of it orchestrated by a Sith Lord. The clone army itself, commissioned by a Sith, controlled by a Sith. The entire war, both sides dancing to Palpatine's tune. Obi-Wan feels sick. He remembers every meeting with the Chancellor, every kind word, every piece of advice given to Anakin. It was all manipulation, all grooming. Mace Windu's jaw clenches. They have been played for fools, and the Republic has been crumbling from within while they fought shadows on distant battlefields. But knowledge is not the same as power, and knowing the truth creates a problem far more complex than the Jedi have ever faced. Palpatine is not just a Sith Lord. He is the Supreme Chancellor of the Galactic Republic, democratically elected, beloved by billions, holder of emergency powers granted by the Senate itself. He commands the loyalty of the clone army, the admiration of the public, and the support of countless systems. The Jedi cannot simply march into his office and arrest him. The political ramifications would be catastrophic. The Jedi Order could be branded as traitors, as attempted coup plotters, as religious zealots trying to seize power. And Palpatine, brilliant manipulator that he is, would almost certainly have contingency plans for exactly this scenario. The Council convenes an emergency session. Every member is summoned back to Coruscant under the guise of a strategic military meeting. They cannot risk communications over holonet, cannot trust that their channels are secure. When they finally gather in the council chambers, the weight of the revelation settles over them like a shroud. Yoda explains what they have learned, what they have sensed and confirmed through the Force. Some council members react with shock, others with anger, but all of them understand the gravity of the situation. They are not just facing a Sith Lord. They are facing a Sith Lord who has already won, who controls every lever of power in the known galaxy. Mace Windu proposes immediate action. They should confront Palpatine directly, with the full council if necessary. They are Jedi, guardians of peace and justice. They cannot allow a Sith Lord to remain in power simply because removing him is politically inconvenient. But Plo Koon raises the practical concern. Even if they defeat Palpatine in combat, what then? The Senate would never accept their word alone. They need evidence, proof that can convince the galactic public. Yoda agrees. Move carefully, we must, he says. Rush in blindly and lose everything, we will. Patience we need. Evidence we must gather. But Obi-Wan brings up another crucial point. Anakin. The Chancellor has been manipulating Anakin for years, grooming him, earning his trust and loyalty. Anakin considers Palpatine a friend, a mentor, perhaps even a father figure. If they move against Palpatine without bringing Anakin into their confidence, they risk pushing him away, risk losing him to the very darkness Palpatine has been cultivating. Yet if they tell Anakin too soon, if they burden him with this knowledge before they're ready to act, the emotional turmoil could be equally dangerous. Anakin has always struggled with his emotions, with his attachments. This revelation could break him. The Council makes their decision. They will investigate quietly, gathering evidence of Palpatine's crimes while preparing for the eventual confrontation. They will watch him carefully, track his communications, investigate his past, and they will begin preparing Anakin, carefully and gradually, to accept the truth about his mentor. Obi-Wan volunteers to take the lead on this. He knows Anakin better than anyone. He can guide his former Padawan through this crisis, but they must also address the most dangerous piece on the board, the clone army. If Palpatine controls the clones, if he has some way to turn them against the Jedi, then no amount of evidence or preparation will save them. They need to investigate the clones themselves, understand how deep Palpatine's control goes. Ki-Adi-Mundi suggests bringing in someone they can trust completely, someone outside the immediate chain of command. They choose Shakti, who has been overseeing clone training on Kamino. If there is something sinister in the clones' programming, she is in the best position to discover it. They send her an encrypted message, carefully worded, asking her to investigate any unusual behavioral programming or hidden protocols in the clones. They cannot be explicit, cannot risk the message being intercepted, but Shakti is wise enough to read between the lines. Within weeks, she makes the discovery that could save the Jedi Order: the inhibitor chips, the biological control devices implanted in every clone trooper's brain, sold to the Jedi as safeguards against rogue behavior, but actually designed for something far more sinister. Shakti secretly extracts one of the chips and has it analyzed by a Kaminoan scientist she trusts, one who was not involved in the original clone project. The scientist discovers the hidden programming, the Order 66 protocol buried deep within the chip's code. Execute the Jedi, kill your generals. When Shakti reports this back to the Council, the final piece of the puzzle falls into place. Palpatine wasn't just planning to destroy the Jedi politically or through individual assassinations. He was planning to use the clone army itself to turn. The turning point comes when Anakin is invited to another private meeting with Palpatine. The Chancellor, as always, is warm and welcoming, asking about Anakin's concerns, his fears. And Anakin, who has been dwelling on Obi-Wan's questions, finally asks one of his own. "Chancellor, why haven't we been able to identify Darth Sidious? We know he exists, we know he's controlling the Separatists, but after years of war, we still have no idea who he is." Palpatine's smile doesn't falter, but there's a microsecond of hesitation, a brief flash in his eyes that Anakin, now attuned to looking for it, catches. The Chancellor recovers smoothly, offering a reasonable explanation about Sith deception and the dark side clouding everything. But the seed is planted. For the first time, Anakin allows himself to truly question his mentor. That night, Anakin goes to Padme. In this timeline, they've been married for less time. Their relationship's still relatively new, and she hasn't yet become pregnant. He tells her about his doubts, his fears. Padme, ever the political mind, shares her own concerns about Palpatine. She's watched him in the Senate, seen how he maneuvers, how he consolidates power. She's seen senators who question him gradually lose influence or disappear from public life. She's worried, has been worried for some time, but she trusted that the Jedi would keep the Chancellor in check. Now, hearing Anakin's doubts, her own fears crystallize. Together, they begin to see the pattern that the Jedi Council has already recognized. When Anakin finally goes to Obi-Wan and admits his suspicions, Obi-Wan knows the time has come. He brings Anakin before the Council and they reveal everything. Dooku's confession, their investigation, the inhibitor chips, the evidence they've been gathering. Anakin's reaction is visceral. He feels betrayed, manipulated, used. The man he trusted, who believed in him when the Council did not, who treated him like an equal, was a monster orchestrating the deaths of billions. The anger is overwhelming, but this time, the Jedi Council is there to help him process it. Yoda speaks to him of forgiveness, not of Palpatine, but of himself for being deceived. Mace Windu, surprisingly, shares his own story of being manipulated by a dark side user in his youth. Obi-Wan simply stays by his side, a constant presence, reminding him that he is not alone. This is the crucial difference. In the original timeline, Anakin was isolated when he learned the truth, torn between the Jedi and Palpatine, desperate to save Padme from a vision of death that may have been planted by Sidious himself. Here he has time to process, to grieve the relationship he thought he had, to be supported by his family and the Order. The Council also makes a crucial decision. They tell Anakin that they know about his marriage to Padme. They've known for some time, Obi-Wan admits. And while it's against the code, they understand that the code was written in a different time, for different circumstances. What matters now is not ancient rules, but the survival of the Order and the Republic. They will address the issue of attachment and the Jedi Code later, after the crisis has passed. For now, they need Anakin focused and balanced, not consumed by guilt and fear. With Anakin on their side, fully committed, the Jedi begin planning their endgame. They now have several advantages. First, they've removed the inhibitor chips from key clone units, meaning Order 66 cannot be used against them, at least not completely. Second, they have Anakin, whom Palpatine trusts and relies upon. Anakin can continue meeting with the Chancellor, can play his role, feeding the Jedi information while keeping Palpatine unaware of the trap closing around him. Third, they have time. Palpatine doesn't know they know. He's still playing his long game, still waiting for the perfect moment to execute his final plan. But Palpatine is no fool, and the Jedi's investigation, careful as it is, eventually leaves traces. He notices that certain military decisions are being questioned more than before, that some of his suggestions are being politely declined by the Jedi Council. He senses a shift in Anakin, a slight pulling away, a new wariness in their conversations. Most tellingly, he notices that several key clone units have been rotated through medical facilities for unexplained reasons. Palpatine begins to suspect that something is wrong, that perhaps his plans have been compromised. He doesn't know how much the Jedi know, but he survived for decades by being paranoid and prepared. He begins accelerating his timeline. The Jedi sense the shift. Yoda meditates deeply and sees through the Force that their window is closing. Palpatine is preparing to make his move. They can wait no longer. The Council decides to act, but they cannot simply assassinate Palpatine or arrest him without cause. They need to force his hand, to make him reveal himself in a way that the Senate and the public cannot deny. Mace Windu proposes a plan. They will confront Palpatine with their evidence, but they will do so with witnesses, with documentation, with holo recordings. They will make him confess or make him attack. Either way, the truth will come out. They choose their moment carefully. The Senate is in session, debating another Emergency Powers Act. The Jedi Council requests an emergency audience with the Chancellor, citing new evidence related to Separatist leadership. Palpatine, curious and perhaps sensing an opportunity to gauge what the Jedi know, agrees. Mace Windu, Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Kit Fisto, and Anakin Skywalker enter the Chancellor's office. But unlike the original timeline, they are not here for a rushed arrest. They are here for a reckoning. Mace Windu speaks first. Chancellor Palpatine, we have evidence that you are, in fact, the Sith Lord Darth Sidious. We have testimony from Count Dooku before his recent death in custody. We have traced communications between your office and Separatist leadership. We have discovered the inhibitor chips implanted in the clone troopers, designed to execute Order 66 at your command. We know about your manipulation of the Senate, your orchestration of this war, your decades-long conspiracy to destroy the Jedi Order and seize control of the galaxy. Palpatine's face remains calm, but his eyes grow cold. These are serious accusations, Master Windu, he says carefully. Accusations made by a dead traitor and paranoid monks who have always resented the authority of the Senate. Do you have any actual proof? Anakin steps forward, and this is the moment Palpatine did not expect. Anakin, whom he has spent years grooming, whom he believed would stand by his side, looks at him with a mixture of sadness and fury. I was your proof, Chancellor, or should I call you my lord? You've been manipulating me since I was a child, feeding my fears, encouraging my anger, driving a wedge between me and the Jedi. You wanted to turn me into your apprentice, didn't you? Another Sith to replace Dooku, but I'm not your puppet anymore. Palpatine's expression flickers. The mask of the kindly Chancellor begins to crack. Anakin, my boy, you don't understand what you're saying. The Jedi have poisoned your mind against me. Everything I've done has been for you, for your future, for peace. But Obi-Wan steps beside Anakin, a hand on his former Padawan's shoulder, a silent show of solidarity. And then Kit Fisto activates a holo recorder, a small device that has been documenting this entire conversation. The evidence is now on record. Palpatine's deflections and lies captured for the Senate to review. Palpatine realizes in that moment that he has miscalculated. The Jedi have not come here for a simple confrontation. They have come prepared, and more importantly, they have Anakin. His most important piece, the keystone of his entire plan, has been turned against him. The transformation is instantaneous. The mask drops completely. Palpatine's face twists into something cruel and ancient, his eyes turning yellow with Sith corruption. His voice, when he speaks, is no longer the warm grandfather, but the cold master. So you know the truth. How disappointing, but ultimately irrelevant. You Jedi are even more foolish than I thought if you believe you can stop me now. I am the Senate. I am the Republic. The people love me. The military obeys me. And the dark side of the Force is more powerful than you can possibly imagine. This Republic will be reorganized into the First Galactic Empire, and there is nothing you can do to prevent it. Mace Windu ignites his lightsaber, the purple blade humming to life. Then you leave us no choice. In the name of the Galactic Senate, you are under arrest. The other Jedi ignite their weapons as well. Anakin, Obi-Wan, Kit Fisto, and Yoda all ready for battle. Palpatine laughs, a sound like breaking glass. "Are you threatening me, Master Jedi?" He extends his hands and Force lightning erupts from his fingertips, not at one Jedi, but in all directions. A storm of dark side energy that would have killed lesser Force users instantly. But these are not the Jedi of the original timeline, caught off guard and unprepared. They are ready. Yoda steps forward, absorbing the lightning with the Force, redirecting it back at Palpatine. Mace Windu presses the attack, his vape-head form turning Palpatine's own darkness against him. Obi-Wan and Kit Fisto flank, preventing any escape. And Anakin, the Chosen One, brings the full weight of his power to bear. This is not a brief skirmish in a Chancellor's office. This is a true battle between light and darkness, and for the first time in 1,000 years, the light has the advantage. Palpatine is powerful, perhaps the most powerful Sith Lord in galactic history. His command of the Force is terrifying. His lightsaber technique is flawless. His cunning is unmatched. He fights with the fury of someone who has spent decades planning for ultimate power, only to see it. The holonet explodes with the revelation. Across Coruscant, across the Republic, beings watch in horror as their Chancellor transforms into a monster. Senators flee the chambers in panic. Military commanders demand confirmation. The public, seeing the undeniable truth with their own eyes, reels in shock. Palpatine has been exposed, not through Jedi accusations or questionable evidence, but through his own words and actions, broadcast for all to see. There can be no spin, no propaganda campaign, no political maneuvering that can undo what the entire galaxy has witnessed. But Palpatine has one final card to play. Through gritted teeth, his voice filled with venom, he speaks a single phrase. Execute Order 66. Across the galaxy, inhibitor chips activate in millions of clone troopers. The command overrides their loyalty, their friendships, their very personalities, turning them into organic droids programmed for a single purpose: kill the Jedi. On hundreds of battlefields, clone troopers turn their weapons on their generals. But the Jedi Council's months of preparation pay off. The clones whose chips have been removed, thousands of them on Coruscant, and in key positions throughout the galaxy, do not turn. Captain Rex, standing beside Ahsoka Tano on a mission in the Outer Rim, feels nothing but confusion when other clones suddenly attack. His chip is gone and his loyalty to his friends remains intact. The Jedi casualties are still significant. Dozens of knights and masters fall in the initial moments of Order 66, killed by the clones they trusted. But it's not the near-total genocide of the original timeline. Roughly half of the clone army does not execute the order, creating chaos and confusion on battlefields across the galaxy. Some Jedi escape, some are saved by loyal clones, and some manage to fight their way free. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant, protected by clone units whose chips have been removed, becomes a fortress rather than a slaughterhouse. The younglings are evacuated to secure locations. The archives are protected. On Coruscant itself, Commander Fox of the Coruscant Guard receives the order, but his chip was removed weeks ago during a routine medical examination. Instead of marching on the Jedi Temple, he immediately contacts the Council. "There's something wrong with the clones," he reports. "They're attacking Jedi across the city. I don't know what's happening, but my unit is holding position. We won't move against the order." Mace Windu, still standing over the defeated Palpatine, makes a galaxy-changing decision. He uses Palpatine's own communication system to broadcast a countermand to the clone army. "This is Master Mace Windu of the Jedi Council. Order 66 is a Sith protocol, implanted by the traitor Palpatine to destroy the Jedi. Clone troopers with inhibitor chips are being controlled against their will. All military units stand down immediately. Do not attack Jedi personnel." This is not a lawful order. The Republic itself is under attack from within. The message creates even more chaos, but it also sows doubt. Clone commanders who were seconds away from executing their Jedi generals hesitate. Some whose chips are malfunctioning or whose personal loyalty is strong enough to fight the programming manage to resist. Commander Cody, standing on Utapau with Obi-Wan having already left for Coruscant, receives Order 66 and raises his weapon, but something in his mind screams that this is wrong. His chip was removed and his aim, which should have been perfect, wavers. He fires wide, missing deliberately, and then clutches his head in confusion. "Sir, something's wrong," he manages to say to the Jedi nearby. "Get to safety. I don't know what's happening to the others." Across the galaxy, the Clone Wars suddenly transform into something far more complex. It's no longer Republic against Separatists. It's now a three-way conflict, with some clones following Order 66, some clones resisting it, Jedi trying to survive and understand what's happening, and the Separatist army continuing its programmed assault. The galaxy descends into chaos. But on Coruscant, the heart of the Republic, the Jedi have won a crucial victory. They have Palpatine in custody. They have proof of his treachery, and they have thousands of clone troopers who remain loyal, not to the Sith Lord who created them, but to the Jedi they've served beside for 3 years of war. The Senate convenes an emergency session, surrounded by Jedi and loyal clone troopers for protection. Many senators are in shock, having just watched their chancellor reveal himself as a Dark Lord of the Sith. Palpatine's closest allies, those who were part of his conspiracy, attempt to flee Coruscant but are arrested at spaceports. Maz Amedda, Sateh Pistage, and dozens of others are taken into custody. The military command structure fractures, with some officers loyal to Palpatine, some loyal to the Republic, and some simply trying to survive the chaos. Bail Organa and Padme Amidala, working together, manage to bring order to the Senate chamber. They propose an immediate vote to strip Palpatine of all emergency powers and dissolve his executive orders. The vote passes nearly unanimously. They then propose that a provisional council of senators, working with the Jedi Order and the military, will govern the Republic until proper elections can be held and a new chancellor chosen. This too passes. The Republic is wounded, but it is not dead. The question of what to do with Palpatine himself is more complicated. He is too dangerous to be kept alive in any normal prison. His command of the Force is such that any facility holding him would need to be staffed by Jedi constantly. Some on the council argue for execution, that a Sith Lord of Palpatine's power cannot be allowed to live. But Yoda, remembering the Jedi's role as guardians of justice, not executioners, proposes a different solution. They will place Palpatine in a force-suppressing stasis, a technique from the ancient Jedi archives, suspending him in a state where he can neither use the Force nor communicate with the outside world. He will neither die nor be free, preserved as evidence of his crimes and a warning to future generations about the dangers of the dark side. With Palpatine in custody and Order 66 partially failed, the next priority is ending the Clone Wars themselves. The Separatist leadership, without Sidious's guidance, fragments. Some genuinely believed in the cause of independence and are willing to negotiate. Others were simply Palpatine's pawns and flee into the unknown regions. The droid armies, without central command, continue fighting in some systems but power down in others. The Jedi and the Republic military begin a systematic campaign to shut down Separatist holdings, but now with an emphasis on negotiation rather than destruction. Many Separatist worlds, learning that the war was orchestrated by a Sith Lord who played both sides, are willing to return to the Republic with guarantees of greater representation and autonomy. Anakin Skywalker, who in the original timeline would have become Darth Vader, instead becomes a symbol of the Jedi's resilience. His choice to stand against Palpatine, to choose the light despite years of manipulation, inspires the Order. The Council, recognizing their own failures in handling Anakin, begins to reform their policies on attachment and emotion. They realize that the rigid interpretation of the Code contributed to Anakin's vulnerability to Palpatine's manipulation. Yoda himself admits that perhaps the Jedi lost their way, becoming too detached, too isolated from the very beings they were meant to protect. The question of the clone army's future becomes a major ethical debate. These men were created as slaves, designed to fight and die for a republic that never asked their permission. With the inhibitor chips now public knowledge, there are calls to remove all chips immediately and give the clones full citizenship and the choice to continue serving or leave the military. A massive medical effort begins, with Jedi healers and Republic doctors working around the clock to remove inhibitor chips from clone troopers across the galaxy. Many clones, freed from the chip's influence, report feeling truly alive for the first time. Some choose to remain soldiers, but now as volunteers serving the Republic. Others choose to leave, to find their own paths, to discover who they are beyond their programming. Captain Rex becomes an advocate for clone rights, working with senators like Bail Organa and Padme Amidala to ensure that clones are treated as citizens, not property. The Clone Rights Act passes the Senate 6 months after Palpatine's fall, granting full citizenship to all clone troopers and banning the creation of any future slave armies. It's not a perfect solution. The trauma of the war, the betrayal of being used as weapons against the Jedi, the knowledge of what they were designed to do, all of this weighs heavily on the clone army. But it's a start, a recognition of their personhood and their sacrifice. The Jedi Order itself undergoes significant changes. The Council acknowledges that their close relationship with the Republic military and Senate compromised their role as peacekeepers. They begin a gradual withdrawal from political affairs, returning to their traditional role as mediators and protectors, rather than generals and politicians. Younger Jedi, like Ahsoka Tano, who has returned to the Order after leaving, push for even more radical reforms. She argues that the Jedi should be more connected to ordinary people, less isolated in their temple, more present in the communities they serve. Some of the older masters resist, but many, chastened by how close they came to total destruction, are willing to listen. Anakin and Padme's relationship becomes a test case for the new Jedi approach to attachment. Rather than forcing Anakin to choose between his love and the Order, the Council. But one piece of Sith knowledge proves unexpectedly valuable. In Palpatine's records, they find references to Sith worlds, to dark side vergences scattered across the galaxy. The Jedi launch expeditions to these sites, not to claim them, but to cleanse them, to heal the wounds in the Force that centuries of Sith activity have created. Anakin, whose connection to the Force is uniquely powerful, plays a crucial role in these missions. On Korriban, on Dromund Kaas, on Exegol, he confronts the lingering darkness and, with the support of other Jedi, helps to restore balance. These experiences deepen his understanding of the Force, teaching him that light and dark are not simply moral choices, but cosmic forces that must be kept in equilibrium. The fate of the Separatist leadership varies widely. Some, like Wat Tambor and San Hill, who were deeply complicit in Palpatine's schemes and committed war crimes, are tried and convicted. Others, like many of the planetary representatives who genuinely believed they were fighting for independence from a corrupt republic, are granted amnesty in exchange for their cooperation in rebuilding. General Grievous, the cyborg general, is eventually cornered on Utapau by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Without Palpatine's guidance, Grievous is simply a brutal killer, not a strategic mastermind. Obi-Wan defeats him in single combat, ending one of the Clone Wars' most notorious figures. The question of what kind of government should replace Palpatine's regime sparks intense debate. Some senators argue for a return to the Old Republic, the decentralized system that existed before the emergency powers were granted. Others argue that the Old Republic's weakness and corruption is what allowed Palpatine to rise in the first place, and that something new is needed. Bail Organa emerges as a leading voice for reform. He proposes a restructured republic with stronger checks on executive power, greater representation for the Outer Rim, and constitutional protections that cannot be suspended even in emergencies. The debate takes over a year, with constitutional conventions held on Coruscant and dozens of other worlds. The document they eventually produce, the New Republic Charter, creates a more balanced system with a weaker chancellor position, a stronger Senate, and an independent judiciary that includes Jedi consultation but not Jedi control. Padme Amidala, working alongside Bail Organa and Mon Mothma, becomes one of the architects of this new government. Her experience with Palpatine's manipulation makes her uniquely qualified to design safeguards against future tyranny. She proposes term limits for all elected positions, transparency requirements for emergency powers, and a system of regular constitutional reviews to ensure the government adapts to changing needs without consolidating too much power in any one individual or institution. Many of her proposals are adopted, and when the first elections for the New Republic are held, she is among the frontrunners for Chancellor. She declines to run, however, stating that the galaxy needs leaders who are not so closely connected to the old regime. Instead, she continues to serve as senator from Naboo, a voice for reform and justice. Mon Mothma is eventually elected as the first Chancellor of the New Republic. She is a moderate, trusted by both progressive reformers and traditional Republicans. Her first act is to formally apologize to the Jedi Order on behalf of the Republic for the years of exploitation, for turning peacekeepers into soldiers, for nearly allowing them to be destroyed. She proposes a new compact between the Jedi and the Republic, one based on mutual respect and clear boundaries. The Jedi will serve as advisors and mediators, but they will no longer lead armies or serve in governmental positions. They will maintain their independence, their own code and customs, while still cooperating with the Republic when their unique abilities are needed. The Jedi Council accepts this arrangement, grateful for the chance to return to their true purpose. The economic recovery from the Clone Wars takes decades. Entire sectors were devastated by the fighting, their infrastructure destroyed, their populations displaced. The Republic, now genuinely committed to helping all its members rather than just the core worlds, launches massive reconstruction efforts. Former separatist worlds receive aid and investment, proving that the new government is serious about inclusion and equality. The clone troopers, many of whom have technical and engineering skills from their military service, play a crucial role in rebuilding efforts. They construct schools, hospitals, and spaceports across the galaxy, turning their training and destruction toward creation instead. Anakin Skywalker's role in galactic affairs evolves in unexpected ways. He remains a Jedi Knight, respected and powerful, but he is no longer the angry, conflicted young man who was so vulnerable to Palpatine's manipulation. Fatherhood changes him. Luke and Leia, growing up with both their parents, show signs of being Force-sensitive from an early age. Anakin teaches them about the Force with a wisdom he learned the hard way, emphasizing balance, emotional honesty, and the importance of human connections. He tells them about his own struggles, his mistakes, his near fall to the dark side. He wants them to understand that being strong in the Force does not make you immune to temptation or error, that vigilance and self-awareness are essential. Obi-Wan Kenobi, watching his former Padawan mature into a wise teacher and father, feels a deep sense of satisfaction. He had feared for Anakin for so many years, worried that the prophecy of the Chosen One was either false or tragically misunderstood. But seeing Anakin now, balanced and whole, Obi-Wan understands that the prophecy was fulfilled, just not in the way anyone expected. Anakin brought balance to the Force not through destruction but through choice, through standing against the darkness at the crucial moment, through proving that even someone touched by so much suffering and manipulation could choose the light. Yoda, ancient and weary, takes on fewer active duties as the years pass. He spends much of his time in meditation, reflecting on the lessons learned from the near destruction of the Order. He writes extensively, creating new texts for future generations of Jedi, texts that emphasize adaptability, humility, and connection to the living Force rather than rigid adherence to dogma. When Padawans ask him about the fall of Palpatine, he tells them that the Jedi's greatest victory was not in defeating a Sith Lord in combat, but in admitting their own failures, in choosing to change rather than clinging to tradition. He reminds them that arrogance and certainty are paths to the dark side just as surely as anger and fear. The inhibitor chip scandal continues to reverberate through the galaxy for years. Medical ethicists, legal scholars, and philosophers debate the implications of what was done to the clones. It sparks broader conversations about genetic engineering, about the rights of artificially created beings, about the ethics of creating life for a specific purpose. The Kaminoans, who created the clones under Palpatine's direction, face galactic condemnation. Some argue they should be punished for their role in the conspiracy, while others point out that they were simply following a commission from what appeared to be a legitimate government authority. The New Republic eventually settles on a compromise. Kamino is placed under Republic oversight, and all cloning facilities are shut down except for medical purposes. The Kaminoans are not prosecuted, but they are forbidden from ever again creating sentient beings for military purposes. The story of how close the galaxy came to falling under Sith rule becomes a cautionary tale told across 1,000 worlds. Parents tell their children about Palpatine, about how even the most trusted leaders can be corrupted by power. about how democracy requires constant vigilance. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant creates a memorial to those Jedi who died during Order 66 and the Clone Wars. It's a simple monument, a wall of names carved in stone, but it serves as a reminder of the cost of complacency, of what happens when guardians of peace become instruments of war. Ahsoka Tano, who left the Order and then returned, becomes a bridge between the Jedi and the ordinary beings of the galaxy. She spends much of her time traveling to worlds recovering from the war, offering help not as a general or a warrior, but as a healer and teacher. She works with local communities, training them to protect themselves, mediating disputes, and helping rebuild social structures shattered by years of conflict. Her approach, more grounded and less dogmatic than traditional Jedi methods, becomes influential among younger members of the Order. Some older masters worry that she's straying too far from established practices, but Yoda, in one of his last public statements before retiring fully from active service, defends her. "Learn from the young we must," he says. "Too set in our ways the old Jedi became." Ahsoka Tano shows us a new path, one that honors our traditions while embracing change. The Sith, it seems, are truly extinct now. Palpatine was the last of the line that stretched back through Plagueis, Tenebris, and beyond. With his capture and imprisonment, the rule of two is broken. The Jedi remain vigilant, knowing that the dark side of the Force is eternal, that new threats may arise in future generations. But for now, for the first time in a millennium, there are no Sith Lords plotting in the shadows, no ancient enemies waiting to destroy them. The Jedi can breathe, can heal, can reimagine what it means to be guardians of peace and justice. But the scars of the Clone Wars and Palpatine's conspiracy run deep. An entire generation grew up during the war, knew nothing. On the Sith world of Exegol, hidden in the unknown regions, Jedi investigators discover something chilling. Palpatine had been building a secret fleet, had been cultivating Sith cultists, had been preparing contingency plans in case his primary scheme failed. They find cloning facilities, Sith alchemical laboratories, and plans for weapons that could destroy entire star systems. It's a sobering reminder of how close the galaxy came to something even worse than the Clone Wars. If Palpatine had successfully turned Anakin, if Order 66 had completely succeeded, the Secret Empire would have been unleashed on a galaxy already broken and defeated. The Jedi dismantle everything they find on Exegol, cleanse the world of dark side corruption as much as possible, and place it under permanent quarantine. Some artifacts are too dangerous to destroy and too dangerous to leave accessible, so they are sealed in the deepest vaults of the Jedi Temple, warded with the Force and guarded day and night. As years turn into decades, the galaxy slowly heals. New generations are born who know the Clone Wars only as history, who see Palpatine's fall as ancient story rather than lived experience. The New Republic, while not perfect, proves more stable and just than the old. The reforms that Padme, Bail, and Mon Mothma championed create a government more resistant to the kind of manipulation that Palpatine employed. Term limits prevent any one leader from accumulating too much power. Transparency laws make it harder to hide conspiracies. Strong protections for civil liberties make it more difficult to transform democracy into dictatorship. The Jedi Order, too, continues to evolve. The reforms begun in the wake of Palpatine's exposure bear fruit. Jedi are more connected to the communities they serve, less isolated in their temple. The prohibition on attachment is reinterpreted, understood now as a warning against possessive love, rather than a ban on all emotional connections. Some Jedi, following Anakin's example, choose to marry and have families. Others maintain the traditional path of celibacy and solitary dedication. The Order becomes more diverse in its approaches, unified not by rigid rules but by shared commitment to the light side of the Force and service to others. Anakin and Obi-Wan, both now masters, take on new Padawans and train them in the lessons they learned so painfully. They teach about the dangers of arrogance, about the importance of questioning authority, about recognizing manipulation and resisting it. They teach that being a Jedi is not about being perfect or invulnerable, but about making the right choice even when it's difficult, especially when it's difficult. Their students carry these lessons forward, creating a new generation of Jedi who are wiser and more grounded than their predecessors. Luke and Leia Skywalker, as they grow older, choose different paths. Luke, deeply Force-sensitive and fascinated by Jedi history, commits fully to the Order. He trains under his father and becomes a Jedi Knight himself, known for his compassion and his innovative approach to using the Force. He explores ancient Jedi techniques, travels to sites sacred to the Force across the galaxy, and eventually writes his own treatises on the nature of the light and dark sides. His work influences Jedi philosophy for generations, offering new perspectives on balance and the living Force. Leia, equally Force-sensitive but more drawn to her mother's legacy, chooses politics. She becomes a senator like Padme, representing Alderaan, where she spent much of her childhood with Bail Organa and his family. She uses her Force sensitivity not for combat but for diplomacy, for sensing deception, for understanding the emotions and motivations of those she negotiates with. She becomes one of the most effective politicians in the New Republic, known for her integrity, her intelligence, and her unwillingness to compromise on matters of justice. In her, the legacy of both her parents is perfectly balanced, the warrior's strength and the statesman's wisdom. Padme herself continues to serve in the Senate for many years before eventually retiring to Naboo. She writes her memoirs, a detailed account of the fall of the Old Republic and the rise of Palpatine, ensuring that future generations understand how democracy can be subverted from within. Her book becomes required reading in schools across the Republic, a warning and a guide. She lives to see her grandchildren, to know that the galaxy she fought so hard to save has found a measure of peace. When she dies, peacefully at an old age, the entire Republic mourns. Her funeral on Naboo is attended by beings from thousands of worlds, all coming to pay respects to one of the architects of the New Republic. Anakin outlives many of his generation, strong in the Force and maintained by it. He watches his children grow, train his grandchildren in the ways of the Force, and sees the Jedi Order continue to evolve. In his old age, he often meditates on the path not taken, on how close he came to falling, on the alternate timeline where he might have become Darth Vader, enforcer of a galactic empire, responsible for the deaths of billions. He knows, because Palpatine told him during their final confrontation, what the Sith Lord had planned for him. The dark armor, the life support systems, the transformation into a weapon of terror. Sometimes in his dreams he sees that dark reflection of himself, and he wakes grateful for the choices he made, for the people who stood by him. Obi-Wan Kenobi eventually retires from active service and takes a position as chief archivist of the Jedi Temple. He spends his final years organizing the Order's knowledge, ensuring that the lessons learned from Palpatine's conspiracy are preserved for future generations. He writes extensively about the importance of balance, about recognizing the warning signs of corruption in oneself and others, about maintaining connection to the living Force rather than becoming lost in dogma. His writings become foundational texts for the reformed Jedi Order. When he dies, Anakin and Ahsoka are at his bedside, along with many of the Padawans he trained. His last words are simple: trust in the Force and in each other. The rest will follow. Yoda passes into the Force at the age of 920, surrounded by members of the Jedi Council in the meditation gardens of the Temple. He has lived to see the Order survive its greatest trial, to see it reformed and renewed, to know that the work he began so many centuries ago will continue. His last teaching, delivered to a group of younglings the day before his death, is characteristically simple and profound. Defeat the Sith we did, but more important than that victory, learned from our failures. We have. Remember this, you must. Not our victories, but our willingness to change defines us. In death, Yoda becomes one with the Force, his consciousness not dissolved but transformed, joining with the cosmic energy that flows through all things. Sometimes, in moments of great need, Jedi across the galaxy hear his voice offering guidance, a reminder that the greatest teachers never truly leave us. The New Republic faces its own challenges over the decades. There are corrupt politicians who try to exploit the system, criminal organizations that thrive in the chaos of Reconstruction, and occasional threats from dark side users who discover Sith teachings and try to revive the old ways. But the safeguards built into the government, the vigilance of the Jedi, and the memory of how close the galaxy came to tyranny keep these threats from growing into existential dangers. Each crisis is met, each challenge overcome, not through the actions of a single hero, but through the collective effort of billions of beings committed to preserving freedom and justice. The story of Palpatine's defeat becomes mythologized over time. Holofilms dramatize the confrontation in the Chancellor's office, though Anakin dislikes most of them for their inaccuracies. Songs are written about the Jedi who stood against the darkness. Children across the galaxy play games where they pretend to be members of the Jedi Council, exposing the hidden Sith Lord. The historical reality, messy and complex and full of near failures and hard choices, gets simplified into a clear narrative of good versus evil. But the Jedi, remembering Obi-Wan's and Yoda's teachings, work to preserve the true history. They know that the real lesson is not that the Jedi were perfect heroes, but that they were flawed beings who managed barely to recognize their mistakes in time to correct them. In the century following Palpatine's fall, the galaxy experiences a renaissance. Art, science, philosophy, all flourish in ways that would have been impossible under the constant pressure of war. New species join the Republic, bringing their own cultures and perspectives. The Jedi Order expands, establishing temples on dozens of worlds, each adapting Jedi teachings to local customs while maintaining core principles. Force-sensitive beings from species previously unknown to the Order bring new understandings of the Force, enriching Jedi philosophy. The diversity that Palpatine tried to destroy through his empire becomes the New Republic's greatest strength. On the anniversary of Palpatine's defeat, the Republic observes Liberation Day, a holiday commemorating the exposure of the Sith conspiracy and the preservation of democracy. It's not a celebration of military victory, but a reflection on vigilance, on the importance of truth, on the necessity of questioning authority. Beings across the galaxy take time to remember those who died in the Clone Wars, to honor the Jedi who sacrificed to protect the Republic, and to renew their commitment to the principles of freedom and justice. It's a solemn day, but also a hopeful one, a reminder that even in the darkest times, even when evil seems to have won, this understanding informs everything the New Republic does. They build institutions not on the assumption that leaders will be good, but on the expectation that power corrupts and must be constantly checked. They educate their citizens not just in history and science, but in critical thinking, in recognizing manipulation, in understanding how democracies fall. They remember that Palpatine rose to power through legal means, through democratic processes twisted to his purposes, and they design their government to be resistant to such manipulation. It's not perfect. No system created by imperfect beings can be, but it's better, more resilient, more committed to its founding principles than the old Republic ever was. The Jedi, for their part, never forget how close they came to extinction. Every Padawan learns the history of Palpatine's conspiracy as part of their training. They study how the Sith Lord manipulated the Order, how he exploited their arrogance and their rigid adherence to tradition. They learn about the warning signs they missed, the opportunities for discovery they overlooked. It's a painful history, humbling in its lessons, but it makes them better Jedi. They learn to question their own assumptions, to remain flexible in their thinking, to balance confidence with humility. The reformed Jedi Order, tempered by near destruction and rebuilt on lessons learned from failure, becomes stronger and more vital than it had been in centuries. As the first century of the New Republic draws to a close, the galaxy is at peace in a way it hasn't known for generations. There are still conflicts, still injustices, still suffering that needs to be addressed. But there is no galaxy-spanning war, no hidden conspiracy threatening to destroy everything, no Sith Lords manipulating events from the shadows. The Force, which had been so disturbed by Palpatine's machinations, flows more freely now, more balanced. Jedi across the galaxy report feeling more connected to the living Force, sensing its will more clearly. Some interpret this as a sign that the Force itself approves of the changes, that balance has been restored not just politically but cosmically. On Coruscant, in the rebuilt Jedi Temple, a new generation of younglings trains in the ways of the Force. They learn to meditate, to sense the living energy that connects all things, to channel the Force for protection and knowledge. But they also learn the history of their order, the mistakes of the past, and the responsibility that comes with power. Their teachers, many of them trained by survivors of the Clone Wars, emphasize balance, connection, and service. These children will grow up to be Jedi very different from those who came before, more grounded, more connected to the beings they protect, more aware of their own fallibility. And that, perhaps more than any military victory or political reform, is the true legacy of the galaxy's narrow escape from Palpatine's tyranny. In the Force prison where Palpatine remains suspended, the Sith Lord dreams. The stasis that holds him prevents him from taking any action, from using the Force or communicating with the outside world, but it cannot stop his mind. He dreams of the empire that might have been, of the power he nearly grasped, of his failed apprentice Anakin Skywalker. And he rages silently and impotently against his defeat, but the galaxy moves on without him, healing from the wounds he inflicted, building something better from the ruins of his nearly successful conspiracy. His legacy is not the empire he dreamed of, but a republic renewed, a Jedi Order reformed, and a galaxy forever vigilant against the rise of tyranny. In trying to destroy the light, Palpatine only made it stronger. And in that failure lies the galaxy's greatest hope for the future.